In a forgotten age, where the sky was not merely an empty space above the world, but a living system that actively influenced every form of existence below, life itself depended on a fragile and sacred balance maintained by two primordial forces known as the sun essence and the moon essence, both of which were far more than celestial bodies and instead existed as conscious energies that carried memory, emotion, awareness, and will, forming the very structure that allowed reality to function without collapsing into chaos. And for countless generations, this balance had been preserved by chosen guardians who were selected not by ordinary means, but through a divine succession system that passed responsibility from one generation to the next, because it was believed that the cycle of day and night was not just natural, but essential to the survival of existence itself. And if even one of these forces were ever disrupted or destroyed, reality would begin to decay in unpredictable layers until existence itself lost its structure and meaning. And within this world governed by unseen cosmic rules, three individuals slowly but unknowingly became connected to a fate far greater than anything they could understand. The first being Kael Draven, a warrior shaped by discipline, ambition, and relentless training, who believed that strength was the foundation of destiny, and that only those who refused to break could claim control over their future. The second being Naren Vale, a quiet and emotionally withdrawn man who carried an unusual sensitivity to dimensional disturbances and fluctuations in dream energy, but was never acknowledged or taken seriously by society, leaving him isolated and internally fractured. And the third being Elira, a fragile and reclusive girl who had lived her entire life in avoidance of sunlight due to a mysterious condition that weakened her body under brightness, forcing her into long isolation, where she developed an unnatural emotional bond with moonlight and silence, unknowingly aligning her existence with lunar energy in ways she could not comprehend. While beneath the surface of this world, deep inside volcanic ruins, sealed by forgotten guardians, an ancient entity known as the Ember Sovereign began to stir after thousands of years of imprisonment, a force not born from light or darkness, but from imbalance itself, feeding on emotional fractures, rejection, instability, and the weakening connection between sun and moon systems, slowly awakening as a rare celestial alignment approached, a moment in which both the sun spirit and moon spirit would descend from their realms and select their next vessels, marking the beginning of a new cycle of guardianship that determined the fate of the entire world. And Kael trained relentlessly, believing that destiny would naturally choose him as the sun guardian due to his unmatched strength and discipline, while Naren quietly sensed that something was wrong in the structure of reality itself, as if unseen cracks were forming beneath the surface of existence. But when the moment of selection finally arrived under a sky divided between blazing gold and deep silver light, the sun spirit descended in an explosive surge of fire and energy and chose Kael without hesitation, engulfing him in overwhelming solar force and transforming him into the new sun guardian before the eyes of all witnesses, while moments later the moon spirit defied every expectation and bypassed all trained candidates, descending instead toward Elira, the fragile girl who was never meant to survive such overwhelming power. And yet the moon spirit bound itself to her anyway, collapsing her body under immense pressure, while simultaneously awakening a dormant strength within her soul that defied physical limitations. And in that exact moment, Naren experienced a silent internal fracture, not visible or dramatic, but deep and irreversible, as rejection turned into emotional collapse, and emotional collapse slowly began forming the foundation of corruption within him. While deep beneath the world, the Ember Sovereign reacted to this imbalance with sudden awareness, as if the moment it had been waiting for across millennia had finally arrived, and its consciousness began rising further toward the surface. After the transformation, Elira was taken away to the moon sanctum, a colossal floating structure suspended high above the endless sky, held together by intricate glowing lunar threads that stretched across vast distances and connected directly to the ancient moon tree, a massive living entity that functioned as an archive of dreams, emotions, subconscious memories, and psychological imprints of every living being across the world. And within this sacred but overwhelming environment, Elira was informed that her role as Moon Guardian extended far beyond controlling moonlight, because she was now responsible for maintaining emotional equilibrium across the entire planet, ensuring stability in sleep cycles, mental peace, and psychological balance among all civilizations, while Kael, now bonded with the sun essence, began noticing subtle but growing instability within the solar core, as if something deep beneath the earth was siphoning its energy and weakening daylight in unnatural and inconsistent patterns that defied explanation. And at the same time, Naren, who had spent his entire life isolated due to his sensitivity to dream disturbances, was approached by a mysterious silver serpent-like entity that did not communicate through spoken language, but instead directly invaded his thoughts, feeding on his emotional pain and gradually reshaping his perception of reality, convincing him that he had been abandoned by the world, ignored by the system, and denied recognition despite his abilities. And as these whispers continued over time, they slowly transformed his inner state, turning sadness into belief, belief into resentment, and resentment into a deep acceptance of darkness that began eroding his original self, while Elira, still struggling to control the overwhelming lunar power flowing through her fragile body, attempted to stabilize the moon sanctum but accidentally disrupted one of the sacred lunar thread networks that connected the moon tree, triggering a devastating chain reaction that spread instability throughout the entire lunar system. And despite her desperate attempts to reverse the damage, one of the core lunar threads snapped completely, sending shockwaves through the moon tree and destabilizing moonlight across the world, forcing her fragile body to endure divine energy that was tearing through her physical limits as she struggled to remain conscious. While Kael returned to the Sun Dominion, expecting order and stability only to discover that it had completely collapsed into silence, the Sun core had vanished without explanation, and daylight itself was beginning to fade for the first time in recorded history. And as both celestial systems began failing simultaneously across the world, Naren finally surrendered fully to the serpent's influence and accepted the power offered by the Ember Sovereign without understanding its true consequences. Unknowingly breaking ancient seals that had imprisoned the Ember Sovereign beneath volcanic depths for thousands of years, allowing it to rise closer to the surface as seismic disturbances spread across continents, and as both sun and moon systems failed together, nature itself began to collapse in stages, forests losing their color and vitality, oceans dimming into lifeless gray expanses, winds becoming unstable, and time itself beginning to feel fractured as if reality was forgetting how to continue existing. And at the center of this collapsing world, Kael, Elira, and the now corrupted Naren were all drawn toward the same inevitable convergence point, where their destinies would collide, and the final truth of their existence would be revealed, that the survival of balance had never depended solely on strength or power, but on whether broken individuals could still choose to repair what they had destroyed, even when everything around them had already fallen into irreversible darkness.